All right, welcome to day 6. Homework is going to be page 16 and 17, and we'll have a quiz next class. So on your homework, remember we were having B be 3 in all cases. You had to look and see what you were leveling off at. In this case, we were leveling off at 0, so we didn't have to add anything on the end. Sub in either of your points for x and y and solve for a. So I wrote it as just a minus out front. That's the same as saying y equals -1 times 3 to the x. And that's showing a reflection over the x-axis because we've got a minus out front. Next one, we were leveling off at +1. So you want a times 3 to the x plus 1. Fill in your 0, 2. Remember, always do the adding and subtracting to get that out of there. So when you subtract the 1 over, you'll just get a equals 1 because anything raised to the 0 is 1. So I didn't write it in here because it's a 1, but you could also have it as 1 times 3 to the x plus 1. Don't forget to put your added or subtracted value on the end when you finally write your equation. And this is just showing a shift up 1 because the times 1 out front isn't doing anything. Next one, the dotted line wasn't in there, but it was leveling off at 3. So we wanted to think of it as a times 3 to the x plus 3. Subtract that 3 out of there, and we eventually get -1 equals a. So y equals -1 times 3 to the x plus 3. That's showing a reflection over the x-axis and also a shift up 3. So we're leveling off at 0, so you don't need to add anything on the end. Sub in one of our points. You get 1 equals a times 3. Divide the 3 over, you get a as a third. So we have y equals 1/3 times 3 to the x. And you could either say multiply y's by 1/3, or you could say vertical compression by a factor of 1/3. Next one's leveling off at 0, so nothing we had to add or subtract on the end. Put in our point 0, 3, you get a is 3. So we have 3 times 3 to the x. You can either say multiply y's by 3 or vertical stretch by a factor of 3. And this one we're leveling off at 0. Put in your 0 and your -1/9 was probably the easiest. Anything times 0 is 1, so a is just -1/9. So you get y equals -1/9 times 3 to the x. We can say multiply the y's by 1/9 or a vertical compression by 1/9, and then the minus out front is reflecting over the x-axis. So today we are going to put everything together. No longer is our base just going to automatically be a 3. We're going to have to figure out what that base is. So the first thing we'll want to identify is where we're leveling off. It's kind of faint on here, but this is flattening off at -1. So we're going to want the base equation to be a times b to the x minus 1. Then we're going to set up two equations like we did on two classes ago, the first time we worked with this. And we'll fill in our x's and our y's. So we're going to have 11 equals a times b to the first minus 1. And we'll have 5 equals a times b to the 0 minus 1. Well, the first thing I'd like you to do is always do your adding or subtracting, get those out of there. So in this case, we've got to add the 1 to get it out of there. And that's going to give us 12 equals a times and b to the first. Add your 1 over, and we'll have 6 equals a times b to the 0. Once you do that step, it's just like we did 2 classes ago. We're going to divide the equations with the bigger exponent on top. 1 is bigger than 0, so the left-hand equation on what I have written is going to go on top. We'll have 12 over 6 equals a times b to the first over a times b to the 0. When you divide, 12 divided by 6 is 2. The a's divide out, and when you subtract your exponents, 1 minus 0 is just 1, so we just get that b is 2. You can sub back in wherever you want. I think it's always easiest to sub in where an exponent's 0 if you have it. So we'll do 6 equals a times 2 to the 0. Anything to the 0 is just 1. So this is a times 1. And a times 1 is just a. So this is y equals, our a value is 6 times 2 to the x. And don't forget your minus 1 that's on the end. I often see on the quiz and the test in this unit, people will do a great job solving, but then when they go to write their answer, they'll forget to put that value that was added or subtracted on the end. If you find when you do your division of the equations that you're getting really weird numbers, often what that means is you didn't add or subtract your value on the end like you were supposed to. All right, next one, notice we are leveling off at y equals 2. So our base equation would be y equals a times b to the x plus 2. So we're going to fill in our x's and y's. We've got 8 equals a times b to the negative 1 plus 2. And we've got 5 equals a times b to the 0 plus 2. First thing we should do after we sub the x's and y's in, add or subtract whatever you have. So we're going to subtract 2. Oops, not 4, but 6. We'll have 6 equals a times b to the negative 1. Subtract the 2. We'll have 3 equals a times b to the 0. We always want to divide our equations and have the bigger exponent on top. 0 is bigger than negative 1. So we're going to have 3 divided by 6 equals a times b to the 0 over a times b to the negative 1. 3 over 6 reduces to a half. The a's divide out. And be really careful when we subtract our exponents. 0 minus negative 1. Minus a minus is a plus, so it's really just going to be 1. B to the first is just b. We've got something raised to the 0, so let's sub back into that. 3 equals a times 1/2 to the 0. Anything to the 0 is just 1, so 3 equals a times 1, or in other words, a equals 3. Write out your equation now. Y equals 3 times 1/2 to the x, and don't forget to put that plus 2 on the end. You have to have your b value in parentheses if it's a fraction. If it's a whole number, you don't necessarily have to, but I always think it's helpful just to always put the b value in parentheses. That way you don't forget it when it is a fraction. Next one, we are leveling off at negative 1. So our base equation is going to be a times b to the x minus 1 on the end. We'll fill in our x's and y's. So we're going to have negative 2 equals a times b to the 0 minus 1. And we'll have negative 5 equals a times b to the second minus 1. Do your adding or subtracting first, so we're going to add the ones over. And we'll get negative 2 equals a times b to the 0. And we'll get negative 4 equals a times b to the second. We'll now divide our equations with the bigger exponent on top. So for me, that's my right-hand equation. So negative 4 over negative 2 is equal to a times b squared over a times b to the 0. Negative 4 divided by negative 2 is just 2. Oh, wait a second. That was off. Sorry, I had an addition error there. Negative 2 plus 1, this should be negative 1 here. So we're now dividing by negative 1, meaning this is 4. Sorry about that. The a's divide out. b squared over b to the 0. Subtract your exponents, you get b squared. To undo a squared, we'll do a square root. So we'll get 2 is equal to b. Normally you'd have a plus minus in front of your radical, but you can't have a negative base in an exponential function. We had one that had a 0 in the exponent, so let's work with that one. Negative 1 equals a times 2 to the 0. Anything to the 0 is just 1, so we'll have a times 1. And you get a equals negative 1. So therefore, we get y equals negative 1 times 2 to the x, and don't forget your minus 1 on the end. If we had to describe our transformations, this has a reflection over the x-axis because of the minus 1 out front, and a shift down 1. So one more page of them, and then you can start your homework from there. So we are leveling off at 2 in this case. So our base equation should be y equals a times b to the x plus 2. We've got our x's and y's. So this would be 4 equals a times b to the 1 plus 2. And 3 equals a times b to the second plus 2. First thing, add or subtract those values over. So we'll subtract 2 for both sides. We'll get 2 equals a times b to the first. Subtract 2 from both sides, you get 1 equals a times b squared. Put the bigger exponents equation on top. So that, for me, that's the right-hand equation. So I'll have 1 over 2 equals ab squared over ab to the first. 1 over 2 is just a half. The a's divide out. And 2 minus 1 gives us 1. So we'll just have b to the first, which is b. Now, one tricky thing here is we do not have anything raised to the 0. So let's go with the raised to the 1. That might be easier. So I have 2 equals a times a half to the 1. Well, that's just 2 equals a times a half. To get that to the other side, we'll divide by a half. But we have a fraction within a fraction. So I'm going to take that off to the side and write it horizontally. 2 divided by 1/2, written horizontally. Back in middle school, you did that as keep, change, flip, so that's 2 times 2 over 1. Well, 2 over 1 is just 2, so this is 2 times 2, which is 4. So we end up getting a equals 4. And just write your equation. We have 4 times 1/2 to the x, and don't forget our plus 2 that was on the end. Next one, we appear to be leveling off at y equals 4. So our base equation will be y equals a times b to the x plus 4. We've got our x's and y's that will fill in to give us 2 separate equations. We'll have 8 equals a times b to the second plus 4. And we'll have 16 equals a times b to the third plus 4. Always do your adding and subtracting first. So this will give us 4 equals ab squared. And when we subtract the other 4, we'll get 12 is equal to ab cubed. Divide your equations with the bigger exponent equation on top. For me, that's the right-hand equation. So I'll have 12 over 4 is equal to ab cubed over ab squared. 12 divided by 4 will give us 3. The a's divide out. 3 minus 2 gives us 1, so we just have b to the first, so we have b is 3. I'm going to sub it into the squared one because that's a smaller exponent. 4 equals a times 3 to the second. 3 squared gives us 9, so this is a times 9. And divide both sides by 9. We get 4/9 is equal to a. So therefore our equation is y equals 4/9 times 3 raised to the x, and we had a plus 4 on the end. We would say that's either multiply the y's by 4/9, or you can say vertical compression by a factor of 4/9, and then you have a shift up 4 with the plus 4 on the end. And our last one for this video, we are leveling off at the dotted line here at -4. So our base equation will be y equals a times b to the x with a minus 4. Fill in our x's and y's. We'll have y equals a times b, sorry, not y. We have -2 for that. -2 is equal to a times b to the 4th with our minus 4 on the end. And then we'll have 4 equals a times b to the 6th with the minus 4 on the end. Always do your adding and subtracting first. So we'll add 4 over on each of these. We'll get 2 equals a times b to the 4th, and 8 equals a times b to the 6th. Divide your equations, bigger exponent equation on top. So we'll have 8 over 2 is equal to ab to the 6th over ab to the 4th. 8 divided by 2 is 4. The a's divide out, and when we subtract our exponents, we get b squared. Take the square root of both sides, and we get 2 is equal to b. It's probably going to be easier to sub in the 1 raised to the 4th. So we'll have 2 equals a times 2 to the 4th. That means we're doing 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. So we have 2 is equal to a times 16. Opposite of multiplying is dividing. And 2 16ths, if we divide them by 2, will give us 1/8 for a. So our final equation will have y equals 1/8 times 2 to the x with the minus 4 on the end. If we had to describe the transformations, the 1/8 we could say either multiply y's by 1/8 or vertical compression by a factor of 1/8, and the minus 4 at the end is a shift down 4. That's it for this video. You got your quiz. Next class period, you'll have to do ones like this. You'll also have to graph them based on a table. Have a great rest of your day.